Cup cars returned to North Wilkesboro this past weekend for the All-Star event. First time since 1996. A little bit of an atypical weekend. They had practice on Friday, had heat races on Saturday, and the race, the All-Star event, was at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. And the 5 car used every opportunity to make their car better and better to get to the race.
Yeah, Kyle Larson after the race talked about the fact that they weren't anywhere even in the zip code on Friday's practice. Really cool with these weekends that you get this atypical type situation. When NASCAR goes to a new event, a new racetrack, or have a new aero package, we've gotten opportunities to practice before we inspect, which allows these crew chiefs and these teams the opportunity to work on their cars. They can bring it to the racetrack, they can change springs, they can change sway bars, they can change camber setting, front end geometries, all the things that you're used to in the past.
Yes.
On a normal weekend, we can't. We're stuck with where the cambers are. We're stuck with the 4 springs in the car. You get to change wedge and maybe heights a little bit. They had a multitude of things they could change, and they used every bit of them from what they transitioned from Friday till Saturday's heat race.
And that's why I don't drive anymore, because you don't have an opportunity to work on the car. The other thing I found fascinating was that Kyle Larson said he didn't do a lot of sim work before this. He didn't want to know where the racetrack was going. But the information that he gave to the crew helped them get where they needed to be.
Yeah, definitely. The practice runs they got, the feedback they got. Kyle Larson out there running different grooves, working his way around the racetrack. Kyle Larson ran that truck race. That I think was incremental as well, because he understood where he could make some grip. They came up with a package, didn't even really hit it to start the race, as we saw. Really kind of hung there in the back for the first, till we got to that caution at lap 15. They came to pit road at lap 18.
And it just fascinated me. When these cars, he came, there were a number of cars that came, but that totally changed the face of the race for them, but for everyone else also.
As a crew chief sitting on top of the box, I'm thinking at that point that if I'm back in the last third of the field, my risk and reward payoff is big here, right? I can come get tires, got an opportunity to drive myself through the field. If a caution comes out, I'm gonna be buried back in the back because I used up my set of tires. If you looked at the race, they had 3 sets of stickers, so they could use one during that first 100 laps at their prerogative. They were gonna have a break at 100 that everybody was gonna take a set, and you only got 1 set of stickers you could put on in the last run. So took a gamble, a little bit of a gamble, that they go green, and it paid off. They went green, drove off to what, a 12-second lead by the end of it, really worked his way forward all day long.
So explain the risk versus reward, because if they had called a caution in that first segment, how bad would that have hurt them?
Yeah, I think if they come and take the tires, they were one of, I think, 8 cars that came, 3 of which were our top 3 finishers as it played out in the end. But they came and took tires. The rest of the field banked on having another caution in that first 100 that they could come get their tires then. It worked out for them. They drove forward. Now, if we have a caution come at, say, lap 40, 50, 60, they'd either have to put those 15-lap scuffs back on or try to fend off on the tires they were on, and they would have gone backwards like they moved forwards in the first run.
Listen, I just drove, and I just saw what was out in front of me. You, as a crew chief, sat on the pit box. You understood it. Where is that break point, and when do you get to that break point where it's risk versus reward? Because there were other guys that we talked earlier that you felt like maybe could have come, but they just didn't want to risk it.
Yeah, I look at it, and it's going to be somewhere past halfway. You had what, 24 cars in the field, so if I'm in the teens, I feel like what do I have to lose? 4 or 5 spots? If it works out the wrong way, if another caution comes, I get buried, and I'll figure out how to unbury myself past 100. But if I'm in the top single digits, I'm in the top 10. Boy, I don't want to bury myself back in the back and take a set right now that I've got to charge through on another caution would set me back to the back. I want to keep the track position I had. Ultimately, going green from there paid out for the aggressive.
Obviously, the place has sat there since '96, and not a lot was done. We know the stories of Dale Jr. and the Weed Eaters and everything that went on there. How much of a factor was the surface of the race?
They had to do some patchwork of the old surface back to wherever they did this. I think those patches actually created this place being more of a one-groove racetrack because you were racing to the grip. So where there were patches, where there was concrete that was usable, you tried everything you could to get on that because that's where you made lap time.
How hard is it for a team to go there and engineer and simulate to that?
Yeah, you guess. You guess through practice.
That's my question.
And that's part of in practice, I think Kyle, and that's one of the things I think Kyle's really good about. He'll run all over the racetrack and get information on not just one particular line of where we might end up racing. He'll go find the places that he's a dirt racer from way back, right? So he'll go find grip. And he was the one in the trucks race that ended up on the asphalt of exit turn 2, touching the grass. And then we saw in the cup race, all 4 tires on that concrete to the inner barrier in 3 and 4 to get him good launch off turn 4. He works around and gets that. I think you've got to get that data in practice. You've got to start thinking about what you're going to do with your shock engagements and how low you're going to be, because there's some things that get really violent when you get really close to hitting those shocks.
So after watching one race up there, what do you see? What would you want to do to the racetrack?
My opinion at this point, you got to repave.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I'm always one that says hold on the old asphalt.
Yeah.
I love the old asphalt. There's enough grip in the patches that have been put in place to put the inner wall, the concrete apron of the inner wall. It's created a one-groove racetrack. If they could have kept the old asphalt everywhere and we didn't have grip that you could go find, I think the old surface would be awesome. But the fact that we have grip, in 1 and 2 there was a repair done on the first seam. The guys put the rights on that. If they missed that with the rights, they lost 3 spots. 3 and 4, you went down to the bottom, got on that asphalt in the bottom that was patched into where the concrete was, or lefts on the concrete, tons of grip there. So to make this place a little more raceable, I think it'd be good to repave it at this point. And I think Marcus talked a little bit about that post-race. I think they put some thoughts in it. They understand that it doesn't need to be a parking lot and baby smooth. It needs to be something that we can create good racing on.
You can tell you're a crew chief, because your view from the pit box is totally different than my view of that bad asphalt out there, slipping and sliding, juking and jiving everywhere. I want asphalt, I want grip. And I hope they do pave North Wilkesboro, because it deserves it. We deserve a great race up there. It was a great weekend for the All-Star race. In the meantime, let's head down to Charlotte, just about 70 or 80 miles, to a racetrack that constantly fascinates me because it is so temperature sensitive. We run middle of the day, into the evening. Tell me about Charlotte.
They give us a practice on Saturdays just before or just after. It was like a 3 o'clock practice on Saturdays.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about not even running that practice.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was so different than this racetrack you're going to race on. The turns 3 and 4 there seems like it just sets up and it's dead in the sun. So when you get to midday in that place, you couldn't make a car turn in 3 and 4 for anything.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't do anything. And 1 and 2 would be all right. And then as the sun went down from that, it just changed the whole racetrack. It's one of those places that it's really hard to get a hold of. And we start this race at 6 p.m.
Yes.
Gonna be right on the tail of that. I hate 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna run it. This race at 4 hours should put us into about 10 p.m.
Yeah.
We're gonna be 2 hours into the darkness.
Yeah.
The race will change immensely. Being able to keep up with your race car, big deal here. Of all things, you've been through it.
Yeah.
Your car doesn't handle anything like it will at the end when it starts a race.
No, and listen, you talk about the beginning of the race. As the sun goes down and that 1 and 2 gets in the shade, that's where a driver takes a break, because he knows, I got grip. But he gets to 3 and 4 and as, hold your breath until you come off, and then you take a breath, then you get back to 1 and 2 again. It's amazing to me how the grooves change. You get to the bottom, you can run the middle of the racetrack, you can run up next to the wall, but it all depends on temperature. Every bit of it does. I was over there a million times, and one of the first times I ever went, I got my car driving really good, and my dad said, oh, it's gonna be terrible. And I said, what do you mean? He said, if it drives good now, it will be terrible when they start. So you need it to drive terrible right now, which was totally backwards of my way of thinking.
As a crew chief, I'm gonna start thinking about, okay, you got that thing driving great. How do I make it where I've got enough adjustability to keep up with the racetrack? Add on top of that, we've added resin to the middle and top grooves, so the top lanes actually play more into this race than they used to back when you were driving. It's gonna be a challenge for all these crews and drivers to keep up with where they go and to have enough adjustability in the race cars to keep up with the fact that as the racetrack cools and gains some grip, where can I continue to make my car a little better?
So 600-mile race, and we talk about adding resin to the upper grooves of the racetrack. How long does the resin last? Will it last the whole race? We hear so many times, it's gone away, and you hear them, they key up that mic, and then they got to find another place.
Yeah, it'll be there, but it may not be as strong. And as the racetrack cools down, you know this, the bottom that doesn't have the resin, but it gains grip just from cooling down.
Yeah.
So the bottom comes back into play. It's the longest race of the season with the most temperamental racetrack. It's a challenge for everybody sitting in the boxes.
So you know it. It's bragging rights for all these teams that are here in Charlotte. It's 600 miles, the only 600-mile race in the country that's not an endurance race, that doesn't take two drivers.
Yep.
It's just one driver and one team. 4 stages.
Yes.
10 extra points on the line.
Yeah.
What does that do to your job?
It's one of those things that you look at, and we're halfway through the season, right? We're 13 races in, we got 13 to go. It's that time of the year you start to think about, where am I in the playoff strategy? Who becomes the bubble conversation?
Yeah.
That's one of those that we have, and this is a weekend you really want to maximize those opportunities of stage points, because there's an opportunity for 10 more. Somebody could go score those, or you can, and create separation here. So the one I look at, and the big conversation piece, has been Chase Elliott.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Chase Elliott, Mr. Popular. Everybody wants him in the playoffs. And I've looked at it a couple of times and looked at the group that's in front of him. He's 63 points behind, and in a Hendrick car with Chase Elliott's ability, I want to believe he can point his way in. So I'm kind of leaning that way. Am I way off base on that?
I think you are.
Oh.
And this is my opinion, but
Yeah.
yes, he's 63 points from the cutoff line right now. But between him and Chase Briscoe is Alex Bowman.
Yeah.
Another Hendrick car, another guy
Great
who's
car.
only 5 points behind. So I gotta feel like if their performance can close that, Alex is gonna bump his way in, which then puts him 81 points behind Bubba Wallace. And if we go back, we had this conversation with Steve Letarte 3 weeks ago post-Talladega. Bubba Wallace has actually outpointed Chase Elliott by 10 points. He was
Wow.
71 points behind then. So if Alex moves forward, then he's got to get to Bubba. That's 81 points.
Yeah.
We also have 13 races left, and I call 6 of them opportunities. You've got 4 road course races, Sonoma,
Yeah.
Chicago Street
Okay.
Course, Indianapolis, Watkins Glen. We've got Atlanta and Daytona for Speedway. There's opportunities for people to win. If we had one winner outside of the top 16, now he's not chasing Bubba. He's actually chasing Chris Buescher, who's 117 points ahead of him.
Wow.
And I don't think Ellen Gustafson could be looking right now and saying, I can point my way in.
Yeah.
I think he thinks he's got to win.
I hadn't looked at it that way. So you swayed me over to your way of thinking. I like the 6 opportunity races, because we know you've got an A.J. Allmendinger. We know you've got a Michael McDowell. You know you've got Bubba Wallace, some of these guys that can jump in and win races and jump over where Chase is at, and you start filling those. To me, there's only 9 guys safe right now.
Yeah.
There's 9 guys in. We can talk anything we want to talk, but there's 9 guys that are in. Everyone else has to get there some way.
So you talk about the 9 guys that are there. Who would you say are your championship favorites? Because I know you like to talk about winners.
Yeah, I like the sharp end of the stick, man. I'm sorry. That's why we do this.
Yes.
We do this to be there, at the tip. You don't do this to be the 16th or the 16th car on the bubble. You do it to be at the top. For me, you got to look at Kyle Larson. You've got to look at him as a guy. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here a little bit. I think that Christopher Bell and that Adam Stevens and those guys have done things that have taken an 8th place car and finished 4th. That have taken a 15th place car and finished 9th by their adjustments, by what they're doing. It's a championship team that is just waiting on that opportunity to take some advantage. So those 2 guys are standing out.
I really like the Adam Stevens, Christopher Bell pick. If you look at last year's playoffs, 2 clutch wins in must-win situations to get themselves through. I think the chemistry here is just coming forward. Adam's won 2 championships already. I think he's got another one coming in the near future with Christopher. A really good choice.
Yeah, I think they're quietly going about building that championship season. We know Kyle Larson and what he's done. Halfway through the regular season, still 13 races to go. Can't wait to see how these next 13 play out.